This is Rip, but I will call him Hogan because that's what people know him as. And he in the film is the greatest wrestler in the world. He's actually a Mary Sue in this movie. He's absolutely perfect. He can do no wrong. He has perfect morals. He loves his family. He loves children. He kisses babies. And yet, until this movie, despite all his perfections and the fact that he has all this money, love has eluded him thus far. In this movie, he takes on Zeus, and he wears some of the greatest outfits that have ever been seen in cinema history, and I'm not joking. If you are over 35, you may not know his name, but you know who this guy is. He was in seemingly every movie during the 80s and early 90s. In this movie, he plays Brel, an 80s businessman. He owns his own wrestling company, but it's failing. And he needs Rip to join on with him, but Rip refuses because he doesn't think Brel's a good guy. You see, the problem with Brel is he's a psychopath and a malignant narcissist. And when he finds Zeus, he will stop at nothing to make every last dollar, and he will stomp on any competition along the way. He goes to war with Rip the entire movie. Even after the first time Rip turns him down, he tries to have him jumped in the parking lot. And then Hogan beats the shit out of everyone. This is Zeus, and like Brel, he's a complete psychopath. He's like a 6'6" monster on steroids who just destroys people. He joins the Battle of the Tough Guys with Brel, and their main objective is to get a fight with Rip. In the meantime, while he's fighting for Battle of the Tough Guys, Brel has him fighting in literally the worst parts of the industrial factories of America. And everyone that fights Zeus for some reason is allowed to use a steel weapon which he eventually turns on them and ends their lives, which Brel is completely fine with. A lot of the movie he's simply just screaming in people's faces. And his costumes are just as good as Hogan's, even though I said Hogan had the best. Oh, and he's a total badass. This is Woman, the love interest of the movie. She works for Brel as a spy who is supposed to seduce Hogan and get him to come to Brel's side. But alas, she fits the trope as the successful businesswoman who likes her life neat and orderly and tidy. And then the loud and lovable disorderly fellow comes along and wins her heart. One of the oldest in the book. She and Hogan become a couple before long. And then during the big fight against Zeus, Brel has her kidnapped, but eventually she breaks her bonds and cheers Rip to victory. This is the guy from City Slickers and Andy Samberg's dad, and they play the corporate ass-kissers in the movie. This was a huge 80s trope where the two corporate assistants always bowed down to the evil executive. They would say things like, "But sir, if we do that, it will close the orphanages down." And to this, evil businessman always responds, reminding them of the profit margin, and they will say things like, "Of course, sir. Of course that's the case." Right you are, sir. This is Randy on the left, and that's Hogan's brother, and he is easily my least favorite character in the movie. The guy on the right is his stupid friend who has 2 lines in the movie that move the plot along. That's the only reason he exists. Randy is obviously the oops baby of their parents, as he is some 20 years younger than Hogan, but none of that is ever explained. In actuality, Randy is just fodder for Zeus. He moves the plot along by being beaten half to death by Zeus and put in a wheelchair. The entire reason this happened is stupid. These 2 morons went to a Zeus fight, which ended early because Zeus was acting like an absolute maniac. So these 2 ran and were running away from the venue, and Brel had them mysteriously tackled by his security team. At this point, Brel has no idea who Randy was. He just had him tackled for absolutely no reason because he was running away because Zeus was murdering people. And then Brel says something to the effect, "What, you're not Zeus fans?" And then his dumb friend says, "We're not Zeus fans. This is Rip's brother." And then we have the 80s trope of the black trainer. The black trainer would provide you with exposition because it seemed like they always trained the villain fighter until they got out of control and then they had to let them go. But this black trainer gives the worst exposition that we have ever heard. He literally tells the crew 2 lines about Zeus, and there are absolutely no follow-up questions by anybody, and it is never mentioned again.
The opening scene is a wrestling scene in which we get to see Hogan destroy a guy that looks like he's from the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
This is simply to establish that Hogan is awesome and on top of his game in every way. Jesse Ventura plays Akhenaten in this movie. Brel is watching the match with 17 of his closest employees. And after Hogan wins easily, Brel decides he really has to have him and asks Hogan to take a meeting with him. The next morning, the Hulk shows how big his balls are with the outfit that he wears to this meeting. In the eventual, the Hulk will tell Brel to go screw himself. So Brel has no choice, and he sends his 2 ass-kissers to the most disgusting bar in the history of humankind. But Brel thinks it's a good idea to have the Battle of the Tough Guys, he's going to call it, his new wrestling idea here, with the most disgusting human beings you've ever seen in your entire life. Then this happens. The entrance of a century. He busts down a steel door. And then he does this. And nobody does anything, or says anything, or calls the police. Back at the chocolate factory, all the Oompa Loompas went to bed. This means that the Hulk could have friends over, and they could watch that psychopath fight a bunch of mentally ill people. This was Dingbat's chance to shine, where he asked the question, "Hey, isn't this that guy that kills people?" Then we get our nothing exposition, and then this gem happens. You have got to be kidding me. Love it. Back to Woman, who has never been to Bavaria before. But Hogan, ever the gracious guest, in the flyest of aqua outfits, says he's going to show her around the Alps. But alas, the Alps look a lot like the Deep South all of a sudden. I don't know how they got here. Then we meet a waitress who has known Hogan his whole life, and she's going with that, "Hey, honey," and everything that goes along with that. Then all of a sudden, of course, these robbers break in and they try to hold the place up. And guess what happens next? Hogan doesn't hesitate, like he's done this 1,000 times, and he starts throwing pies at them. He proceeds to beat the ever-living shit out of the burglars, and then he's the hero of the day. And if you are a male over the age of 6, you know what this look means. And all of a sudden they're an item and a couple, doing newly formed couple things like having pointless tickling contests. And these contests have no winner and no loser.
So this leads to my absolute favorite scene in the movie. Hogan is at some sort of celebration of children. It's like a utopian event where he's teaching kids how to fight each other in hand-to-hand combat. He's kissing babies and he's throwing kids up in the air, which I always found funny when, like, athletes and entertainers, they throw kids up in the air and that makes them like a good father, or they care about children. It's pretty hilarious. And then all of a sudden, as Hogan is in a complete euphoric stage of his wonderful goodness, Nighthawk shows up in a helicopter. It's Brel and Zeus, and they are hell-bent on just landing this helicopter on top of like 100 children, and Hogan and Black Trainer have to pull them back so they are not squashed to death.
This is literally one of the craziest scenes I've ever seen in my life, and in no way, shape, or form could it be made today. There is absolutely no way. Throughout this entire movie, Hogan just presents himself as a Captain Save-A-Ho. He'll do anything for his fellow man, because he's perfect in every way. And I have to say, this is a pretty cool shot, even though this movie's horrible. and it is pretty badass.
So after literally the smoke clears, Zeus approaches Rip or Hogan or whatever his name is. He threatens him. Hogan stares him down. He screams and bumps his chest a few times. But Hogan just stays cool. He looks like he's going to explode, but he stays cool.
The movie takes somewhat of a dark turn here. Randy and friend decide to have a nice night out on the town, and they go to what looks like the bowels of a generator at Chernobyl to watch a fight between Zeus and a bunch of hillbillies. And you can only imagine how this goes down. And like I said, everybody runs, and Randy and Dude Man are captured, and they are brought directly to Zeus for some reason. Blink and you missed it, but Zeus appeared to be joking around there. What in the hell could he have been joking about? Anyway, Burrell actually has Zeus beat the ever-living shit out of Randy. This allows us to get a real glimpse at the acting of Hulk Hogan.
If anybody knows me, and they know what my pet peeve is, it's hospital scenes in 80s and 90s action movies. What is the point? No one's here for this. No one's here to watch our hero cry and hold hands.
This one is especially bad. Of course, Randy's in there, bandaged from head to absolute toe, and Hogan is wearing maybe the most ridiculous outfit I've ever seen in my life. I think it's supposed to be a take on a priest's outfit, but I actually have no idea if that's true.
Okay, so if you didn't know by now, the fight is on. Hogan wants a piece of Zeus now for crippling his brother in the ring. Brel couldn't be any more evil than he already is, but he kidnaps woman, and it's one of the other oldest tropes in the book, throw the fight or else the woman whatever. And so Hogan doesn't start off too good in the fight.
Nobody knows what the rules are. There are 2 referees, but they are quickly dispatched of.
Woman has now broken her bonds and escaped from her silly captors, and she's trying to get to the ring to show herself to Hulk that she's safe.
But while she tries desperately to get to the ring on time, things are just not going too well for Hogan. He's getting his ass kicked every way, shape, and form. He gets choked out more than any human I've ever seen in this movie. And then the most batshit part ever comes.
Yeah, another crazy part in this movie. It begs the question, who is this movie for? But it was the 80s and 90s, so it's for 7 and 8-year-olds.
Zeus is intent on pulling this pole out and then impaling the Hulk through the heart on national TV, and Burrell is totally fine with it.
I want to especially highlight this scene, because Hogan is the only person in the history of action movies to survive a neck snapping.
But luckily after that, Randy moves his finger, and Hulk sees it, and nothing inspires someone like that. So he goes on to literally beat the hell out of Zeus now for some reason. Zeus turns completely incompetent.
At one point, he punches him so hard he turns into Anthony Davis. And now that he's beating the hell out of Zeus, and you were somebody that was worried about Woman or Randy or Black Trainer, you don't have to worry anymore. Everything's fine now.
Hogan, a saint throughout the movie, enjoys inflicting pain on Zeus and sends him to his death.
They make it very clear that Zeus has passed on, and they just kind of leave his body there. It's very grotesque.
Burrell backs into a live wire for some reason and looks very silly as he does. And that's really it. Oh, and this.
Fighting against naked aggression.